All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give our praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakakwadash, the honor to the apostle and elder great millstone, to all them across the globe, pushing the word truth and sincerity. I want to say Shalom. Just something I just came across a little earlier today, and I'm let it play. Check it out. I was in Shanghai, and you have the jaywalk kind of policy. You're not allowed to jaywalk in China. They have facial recognition cameras in every sidewalk, and what they do is if you jaywalk when the light is red, it'll scan your face, and it'll deduct money automatically from your bank account, and they'll display you on a big LED board calling you a criminal, all done automatically, remotely. It was absolutely insane. It gets so crazy that in certain places of Shanghai, and you want to walk on the sidewalk, you're only allowed to walk in one direction. If you walk in the opposite direction, they scan your face, deduct money from your bank account, and if you don't have money in your bank account, social credit score gets removed. Anybody ever got magic was calling them trash? All right, I was just thinking about that, and it's just a precursor to the MOTB. If you know that the world is a stage, and everybody's a participant, and over the years we have watched the infrastructure, several models being implemented in these other countries, man. So-called experiments. And what Esau does, he takes these experiments and he runs trials and tests. Social experiments, and to see the reaction and to see the functioning and the accuracy, I guess, the efficiency of the implemented programs or uh, the implemented systems, all right, that are being used in other countries, man. We got these other countries who are actively experimenting with AI technology, with holograms. All right, they have these 15-minute cities in China. All right, they have these uh, market of the beast, the MOTB. There are probably microchip being initiated in Europe, along with some places here in America. So what you see happening in geopolitics and um, in these social experiments in these other countries, all right, Esau's gonna bring them all together and bring them here to America. You heard him talk about the scanning your face and effectively negatively affecting your social credit score, all right, and ultimately locking you out of the system. So I just Googled social credit score USA. It says the United States does not have a government mandated social credit score. However, Americans are subject to a market driven financial credit score, to the FICO, all right, increasing corporate surveillance, which many analysts liken to a decentralized private sector social credit system, and uh, that's very true. They have these different companies who are able to trace your digital footprint, the amount of money you spend, where you spend it, how you spend it, your timely payments or lack of paying on time, which negatively affects your credit, and sometimes you wonder why you can't get approved for $100 credit, at an online store or whatever. Or it's because your social credit score is being analyzed by these companies, which deems you as a high risk and unable to be trusted with funds. And you can see that with your Uber drivers, your delivery drivers who are working the app-based jobs where they ask you to rate their performance or rate their service. And I encourage brothers to watch the old episode of Black Mirror, man. All right, Black Mirror is highly accurate. All right, in the things that you're seeing being seen done in society today, all across the world. And I just read a couple of things that says on corporate and social scoring. So behavioral profile, insurance companies and employers increasingly utilize social media profile, digital footprints, and telematics like driving behavior apps to determine premiums and hiring eligibility. Right, man. So if you had uh, speeding convictions or insurance lapse that can be kind of negatively against you in jobs, man. And they could be spaced out over years, and you could have paid, and you could have been found not guilty. But the fact that it's in the system, all right, they can do that against you. All right, it says gig economy ratings, rideshare example given Uber, Lyft, and delivery platforms rely on two-way rating systems that dictate your access to services and employment opportunities. It's the algorithmic basis bias. So consumer advocates frequently warn that these opaque algorithms and background screening services, such as those used by landlords and gig economy platforms, can unfairly penalize individuals based on public data or demographic factors. And basically your fate, your livelihood is in the hands of others, man. They can leave a negative, see, like your fries are cold, even though you may have to drive, halfway across town. They don't consider those things, man. And people's livelihoods are hanging in the balance based on somebody's mood about how they feel that how you performed your service, man. And it could become to a point to where people conspire against you. The algorithms could uh, 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 be a big part of whether people eat or not. This uh, social credit social credit score is going to be a thing in the future. The 15-minute cities, all right, and ultimately being out of society. All right, which is another episode on Black Mirror that people are going to have to really understand. All right, the importance. All right, of the privacy coming to pass, man. And I wanted to get this quick, because you got to understand that Moab and Edom, Esau, Edom, they were always hand in hand um, in the downfall uh, Esau of Israel, man. All right, they always were 1-2, so to speak. All right, and they're all against us, man. Psalm 83 tells you they're confederate against us. Edom, all right, Ishmael and Moab, man. They're the three main adversaries. All the nations are, but them are some of the top adversaries of Jake. So we know that that what's being done in their lands is going to come here to America. All right, this is on Lamentation 4 and 18. It said they hunt our steps. That we cannot go in our streets. Our end is near. Our days are fulfilled, for our end is coming. It's nothing but prophecy. All right, that pretty soon people are gonna be cut off from society, man. They're not gonna be able to buy or sell. They're gonna be able to afford the high cost of inflation for basic goods. And just something that is fulfilling prophecy. Is something that we got to keep a watch on, man, because what's done in the outside, outside of our borders, is going to be brought here. This social construct of one world government, all right, is coming to fruition. But we know how about from the outside is going to thwart that. All right, we're not ignorant of Satan's devices, man. Satan means adversary. You know, and we know that Moab and Ammon and Ishmael and Esau they're the adversaries of Israel, man. This technology, the way America, the way the world is going now. It's gonna be more evident of who they're targeting. It's gonna be the elect. It's gonna be the tribes. So just something I wanted to share with them and say shalom.